Welcome to the Humanix Light Industrial Orientation, where finding great jobs for great people is our passion.
Hi, this is Nancy, and welcome to Humanix. Thanks for carving the time to participate in this orientation and safety training. We hope you will see that investing your time with us is a good decision. Think of Humanix as your career home base, and your career goals are the most important item. Humanix staff will work hard for you. Welcome, and again, thank you for choosing Humanix.
Here at Humanix, we pride ourselves in offering benefits to our employees such as no fees for our services, medical insurance, paid personal time off and holidays, employee stock ownership program, which means we are an employee-owned company, a $100 employee referral bonus, so please remember to refer your family and friends, Family Medical Leave Act, just to name a few. Important things to know. Humanix is your employer. Please keep our office phone numbers handy. Our recruiters are on call after business hours, so please leave us a message at any time. We are committed to providing exceptional service both in person and through our website. You can access your employee handbook, timesheets, forms for your weekly payroll, personal pay account, W-2, and career resources on our website at humanix.com. About your pay. We ask that your reporting of verified hours worked be done every Monday by 12 noon, so we can get your pay to you by Friday. Submitting verified hours worked will be done depending on the client company and supervisor preference. You will be instructed on each placement the steps to take to report your hours worked. Paper timesheets can be faxed or photographed by your cell phone and attached in an email. For some job assignments, the Humanix time clock system, ClockView, provides the ability for you to log in at the beginning of each shift and log out at the end of your shift. Hours verified will automatically be reported to Humanix. Just remember to log in and out each day. Please call our accounting department if you have any further questions. For employees using a paper timesheet, please complete your timesheet with all the details needed to generate your weekly pay. No corrections may be made once the client signs your timesheet. Additional blank timesheets can be downloaded from our website at humanix.com in the Employee Center section, or contact our office and we are glad to email or mail you additional timesheets. A copy of your completed timesheet is available upon request. For employees using ClockView, please log in and out each day with your provided schedule using your clock ID and PIN. You will be provided instructions and login information upon placement. Get your weekly pay one of two ways. Direct deposit is available into a checking and/or savings account. The other option is a pay card account. This card is a Visa card ATM debit. You will receive pay weekly using your own 4-digit personal identification number. Access is available at the nearest ATM or retail store to withdraw cash or make purchases right away. You can access your pay card information through the Humanix website or 24/7 with a live customer service representative. The toll-free number is listed in your employee handbook. Payroll will be in your account weekly on Friday at 9:00 a.m. Weekly payroll stub information and W-2 information, which is issued annually by end of January, can be obtained at Humanix's website in the Employee Center section. Pay stub information can also be obtained through 24/7 toll-free phone access. This toll-free number is listed in your employee handbook. Harassment in the workplace. It is against Humanix policy for any worker to harass another worker under any conditions. If you have been harassed, please let Humanix and the client supervisor know. Since Humanix has a zero-tolerance policy regarding harassment, it may be grounds for termination. Injuries at work. Humanix is your employer. If injured, notify your client supervisor and contact Humanix immediately. You will be asked to complete an incident report form documenting your injury. If you need medical treatment, call us immediately. We recommend you go to U.S. HealthWorks in Spokane and Idaho Occupation Medicine facilities in Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, or Hayden. In Las Vegas, we recommend Center of Occupational Health and Wellness. Your Humanix Employee Handbook will be available at the end of this orientation presentation. Please take the time to review the handbook thoroughly and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks again for choosing Humanix.
Hazardous communication is an employee's right to know law required by OSHA. It is a program where we tell you about the hazardous chemicals used in the workplace. We will also train you on how to protect yourself from the effects of these hazardous chemicals. Most of our positions do not directly handle chemicals, but awareness of your surroundings in a manufacturing environment is important. Hazardous communication training is essential for creating a safe work environment. Workers need critical information about the hazards associated with the chemicals that they handle and how to protect themselves and the environment. Most developed countries have laws regarding the use of hazardous chemicals in the workplace. Many of these laws are based on the Globally Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals, or GHS. The goal of this training is to establish basic understanding of the 5 essential components of a hazard communication program. Part 1, the written program. Part 2, hazardous chemical inventory. Part 3, GHS compliant labeling. Part 4, safety data sheets or SDSs. Part 5, safety controls. The written program is an important source of information needed to prevent accidents related to hazardous materials. It presents uniform guidelines for the identification, classification, and presentation of chemical hazards. A copy of the program must be in writing and located at each facility so that all important safety information is easily accessible to you and your coworkers. The written program includes the names and contact information for on-site safety program administrators, an inventory of all the hazardous materials on site, including the associated SDSs, training procedures for both general and non-routine tasks for employees and private contractors, container labeling requirements, and general instructions for the safe handling and proper disposal of chemicals and emergency procedures. As an employee, you must recognize and exercise your right to know and right to understand the hazards in your workplace. You should know and understand administrator contact information, the inventory of hazards, SDSs for the chemicals in your facility, emergency response procedures, hazardous chemical labeling for every container that contains a potentially dangerous chemical. You should know how to perform your job in accordance with the necessary health, safety, first aid, and emergency response procedures, and how to perform non-routine tasks such as cleaning machinery that may result in additional hazards. Employees who work with hazardous chemicals must demonstrate that they can safely use the material, safely evacuate an area in the case of an emergency, and proper use of personal protective equipment. As a part of an organization's written program, the Hazardous Materials Inventory provides a summary of all hazardous substances in the workplace. In this section, you will learn the general components of a hazardous materials inventory and the classifications related to hazard type, routes of entry, and exposure limits. Immediately report all unlabeled containers to your supervisor and leave the container where you found it. In the case of a leak or spill, protect yourself by informing your supervisor of unusual odors or spills and leaving the area of a large spill or chemical release. A hazardous chemical inventory is information on what chemicals are present on the site. Identification for each chemical, including the full name, which matches the container labels, the chemical's commonly used name, and the product's unique identifier. It also includes safety information, including SDSs sent by the manufacturers, which outline the health and physical hazards of the materials. Hazardous chemical inventory will indicate where it is located and the location and department where each hazardous material is used. This includes all sites and locations within the organization where materials are handled and stored, as well as the location of related SDSs. Manufacturers, importers, and distributors must evaluate and classify chemicals produced in their workplace in accordance with the GHS classification section. They must take the full range of available scientific information concerning all potential hazards into consideration. Information is compiled on the SDS, including specified criteria for each health and physical hazard and detailed instructions for how to evaluate a hazard. The next 3 slides will describe each hazardous chemical classification and give examples of each. Physical hazards are physical threats from fire, explosion, or reactivity to the facility and personnel within the area. Health hazards pose a threat to the health of facility personnel. Shown are some examples of both physical and health hazards. Simple asphyxiants are gases that displace the oxygen in the air and in doing so deprive the body tissues of oxygen. Combustible dust are concentrations of dust in the air and static accumulations that may become explosive under certain conditions. Pyrophoric gases are gases with an autoignition temperature in the air at or below 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Hazards not otherwise classified, HNOCs, are hazards that must be stated on the SDS and label if none of the aforementioned classifications apply. Routes of entry are ways that a substance can enter the body. These are ingestion through the digestive tract by swallowing, absorption through the eyes, skin, or mucous membranes, inhalation through the respiratory tract by breathing, injection, piercing the skin, for example, through cuts or needle insertion. In addition to recognizing how a substance enters the body, it is important to know how toxic each specific material is. Some materials have few harmful effects at high concentrations for long periods of time. Others can be very dangerous, even fatal, at very low concentrations for very short periods of time. Again, very few of our job assignments involve working with chemicals. A chemical hazard is classified by each of the components shown. Throughout the next few slides, we will explain the 5 steps of hazard classification in detail. Hazard type identifies the type of threat that a chemical poses to the personnel, workplace, or environment. Many chemicals pose more than one hazard type. It is important to know the difference between HMIS/NFPA and GHS hazard categories. Please remember, the lower the number, the higher the severity. Signal words are used to indicate the relative level of severity of hazards. Signal words will be danger or warning. Danger is used for the more severe hazards. Warning is used for less severe hazards. The Hazard Communication Standard, HCS, requires pictograms on labels to alert users of the chemical hazards to which they may be exposed. Each pictogram consists of a symbol on a white background framed with a red border and represents a distinct hazard. The pictogram on the label is determined by the chemical hazard classification. Always read the label or the safety data sheets and follow the instructions. Label requirements. Number 1 is the product identifier. Number 2, the signal word. Number 3, hazard statements. Number 4, precautionary statements. Number 5, supplier identification. Number 6, pictograms. The Globally Harmonized System, or GHS, establishes a standardized approach to classifying harmful chemicals and communicating hazard information on container labels. This new standard improves worker awareness by mandating that safety and handling information be visible on all hazardous containers. In this section, you will learn how to read pertinent safety information required on all primary labels for hazardous chemical containers, the 9 safety risk pictograms required on chemical product labeling, and labeling requirements for secondary containers and pipes that contain hazardous chemicals. Please take a few minutes to become familiar with the 9 GHS pictograms. Let's move on to labels for secondary containers. When hazardous materials are transferred into secondary containers from their original containers, these must also be labeled with the contents and hazards. Alternative labels are acceptable as long as they include the product identifier and words, pictures, or symbols that indicate general information about the product and the hazards involved. If you find a chemical in a container that is not labeled, leave it where you find it and tell a supervisor. Proper labeling of pipes is always advised as a best practice to avoid incidents. Labels must be present at all junctions and fittings. Labels must identify the material being carried and the direction of the flow. 25 feet is the maximum distance between labels. GHS establishes a standardized approach to classifying harmful chemicals and communicating hazard information on SDSs. This new standard improves worker awareness by mandating that thorough safety, handling, and emergency response information be easily accessible at job sites and facilities. In this section, you will learn the standardized 16 sections of an SDS and how to use the SDS to determine the related hazards and controls, and how to protect yourself from hazards, the hazards of the chemical, and the list of the chemicals in the product. Please take a few moments to review the 16 sections of the SDS. In this section, you will learn about the hierarchy of engineering, administrative, and PPE controls, and how various types of controls guard against injury in the workplace. When no alternative exists to eliminate or substitute a hazardous material in the workplace, a set of additional precautionary controls must be established to assure worker safety. Engineering controls will be created to eliminate the hazard, use of substitute materials, or install protection systems. Administrative controls establish safe work policies and practices. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, will be provided. PPE is used to prevent health risks resulting from direct exposure to workplace hazards. Shown is an example of a protective uniform intended for low-hazard industrial process operations, which can include a hard hat, coveralls, safety boots, gloves, and glasses. Congratulations! You have completed hazard communication for employees.
Safety orientation. 4 steps to proper lifting. First, size up the load. Use a hand truck if possible. Get help if you need it. Check for slivers, nails, exposed staples. Use gloves if necessary, and make sure you have a clear path to where you are moving the load. Second, lift. Bring the load as close to you as possible before lifting. Lift with your legs and not your back. Keep your head up, your back straight, and bend at your hips. Third, move. Keep the load close to your body. Look where you are going and shift your feet to turn. Do not twist your body. Fourth, get set and lower. When setting a load down, let your leg muscles carry it down, and make certain your fingers and toes are clear before setting the load down. Safety training and awareness. Accidents happen because of unsafe acts or unsafe conditions. Safety rules for all employees. Immediately report to Humanix and the client supervisor all work-related injuries and illnesses, unsafe acts or unsafe conditions, and property damage or near-miss accidents. Ladder safety. Before you use a ladder, check it for defects such as loose joints, grease on steps, or missing rubber feet. Do not paint your ladder. You may hide a defect. Do not use a ladder as a brace, workbench, or for any other purpose than climbing. Do not carry objects up or down a ladder if it will prevent you from using both hands to climb. Always face the ladder when climbing up or down. If you must place a ladder at a doorway, barricade the door to prevent its use and post a sign. Do not stand on the top step of a stepladder. Only one person is allowed on a ladder at a time. Always keep both feet on the ladder rungs except when climbing. Do not step sideways from an unsecured ladder onto another object. If you use a ladder to get to a roof or platform, the ladder must extend at least 3 feet above the landing and be secured at the top and bottom. Do not lean a stepladder against a wall and use it as a single ladder. Always unfold the ladder and lock the spreaders. Set a single or extension ladder with the base 1/4 of the working ladder length away from the support. Ways to avoid slips, trips, and falls. Wear soled footwear with grip treads. Walk at a normal pace. Do not run or hurry. Keep a clear view of your route of travel. Be aware of your surroundings. Do not climb on machinery. Stay in authorized walkways. Hearing conservation rules and procedures. Personal stereos, such as iPods, will not be permitted in any operating area of the client company property. Hearing protectors, at least 2 types of earplugs, will be provided by Humanix or the client company. Hearing protectors and replacements will be provided free of charge. Hearing protectors will be properly worn at all times, except in offices, break rooms, and restaurant facilities.
Hearing conservation. During work, if you're standing close to someone and you have to yell to be heard and you haven't been given hearing protection, you might be in a high noise area. Contact Humanix and we will work with our client to identify these areas and determine what steps need to be taken to protect employees. Personal protective equipment, or also known as PPE. If the job you are doing requires personal protective equipment, our client will issue you the required personal protective equipment, show you how to correctly use it, and how to take care of it. All employees must use required PPE. Personal protective equipment must be approved by the client company and meet applicable standards. Damaged or worn personal protective equipment will not be used. Personal protective equipment will be maintained to prevent abnormal wear. Client company-owned PPE will be returned at the end of each shift. Respirator Protection Program. If the job you are doing requires you to wear a respirator, you will need to become part of a respirator protection program that includes fit testing and other safety measures.
Electrical safety. Only qualified maintenance personnel are authorized to do any work on any electrical equipment. Do not touch electrical equipment or attempt repairs. If you see a potential electrical hazard, inform the client supervisor immediately. A voltage as low as 30 volts can kill you. Electrical safety awareness. Ground-type cord sets may only be used with ground-type receptacles when used with equipment requiring a ground-type conductor. Attachment plugs and receptacles may not be altered or connected in a way that would prevent the proper continuity of the equipment grounding conductor. Only electrical equipment that is double insulated or designed for use in areas that are wet or likely to contact conductive liquids may be used. Do not touch electrical equipment with wet hands. PPE must be used when handling electrical equipment that is wet or covered with a conductive liquid. Locking type connectors shall be properly secured after connection to a power source, and extension cord shall be 3-prong grounded type. Proper hard conduit is required to pass electrical cables through walls, doorways, windows, ceilings, and floors. Lockout and tagout. When equipment is to be worked on, maintenance personnel will lock out and tag out all sources of energy associated with that equipment. This is to protect the maintenance worker and anyone nearby. If you see a lock or tag, do not touch the lock, tag, equipment, or controls. Reporting accidents, injuries, violations, or near misses. All employees are required to report all accidents, injuries, safety violations, and near misses to Humanix and the client supervisor. It is also required to complete a Humanix incident report. To eliminate hazards, we must be aware of them. Humanix and the client supervisor will discuss the methods of reporting these instances. A message from the Humanix Safety Committee. The safety of every Humanix employee is important to us. If you have any concerns about workplace safety, please do not hesitate to contact our office. Our Safety Committee meets monthly and all safety concerns will be discussed at that time.
Once again, thank you for connecting with Humanix. We work hard to connect businesses to people who bring the valuable talents, skills, and advanced know-how to make sure any level job gets done right. We appreciate the time you have invested with us.